politics now, and the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has controversially scrapped winter fuel payments for 10 million pensioners as part of her mission to save £5.5 billion.
Well, charities are warning the move could plunge millions into fuel poverty, but it doesn't stop there.
Speaking in the Commons yesterday, she blamed the £20 billion black hole entirely on the former government.
I am announcing today that I will hold a budget on October the 30th, alongside a full economic and fiscal forecast from the Office for Budget Responsibility. We have inherited a projected overspend of £22 billion. Some, including the Leader of the Opposition and the Shadow Chancellor, have claimed the books were open. How dare they?
Wow, this was vicious in the House yesterday. We've got Fraser Myers, Deputy Editor of Spiked, with us here in the studio. And Jeremy Hunt, he wasn't taking any criticism yesterday, was he?
No, I think he had a point. He insisted that actually, you know, a lot of this stuff was open before the election. In fact, Rachel Reeves herself in June told the Financial Times that I won't be able to just waltz in there and say that, you know, there's no money left. I've looked at the books as a horror show, because we now have the Office for Budget Responsibility and most of these things are made public. And everyone, you know, if you just cast your mind back a few weeks ago during the election, you had the Institute for Fiscal Studies, you had the Institute for Government, all saying that roughly there's this £20 billion black hole that will either have to be covered by tax rises or spending cuts. Both of the parties were very dishonest. You could have probably guessed that the Tories would have gone more for spending cuts and Labour would have gone more for tax rises. But, you know, Rachel Reeves kept saying, you know, read my lips, no tax rises on working people.
Well, that's going to be a nonsense. So this budget, when are we going to get this budget?
We're going to get this in October, and already, you know, we've heard some things there, like the scrapping of the winter fuel payment. I think that's probably the thing that's going to worry people the most, because that's going to affect 9.9 million pensioners. So only a handful of pensioners, those who are receiving pension credit, will continue to get the payment. A lot of age charities have warned that actually, you know, this will affect a lot more people than you'd expect. A lot of low-income pensioners who aren't exactly on the poverty threshold, but, you know, are struggling. And the energy price cap is probably going to go up by 10% this year. So that's going to be really, really difficult for a lot of elderly people. And I think, you know, we seem to have this strange idea in this country. I think people in the political class, anyway, I don't think ordinary people think this, but people in the political class imagine that all elderly people are all well off and they all own their own homes.
If I hear this again,
it's infuriating.
Well-off pensioners. I don't know of any well-off pensioners.
No, I think it's because, you know, people in the political class, they're well off. The old people they know all have homes, all have done well out of life. That's really not the case in this country. We have some of the highest pensioner poverty in Europe. So this is potentially quite catastrophic.
She's going to, sorry just to interrupt you, she is going to take money off all of us, well, most of us, but she's going to make it look as if, if you're quite ordinary and you earn an ordinary salary, we'll try and leave you alone, but we're going to get all those other ones out there, the ones who get capital gains tax, the ones who get inheritance tax, the ones who get selling your house. You'll be done for that if you make any sort of profit on your house.
Well, exactly, and you know, the cost of housing has gone up so much that you no longer have to be a particularly wealthy person to pay inheritance tax just for, you know, passing on your house to your kids. So, yeah, I think it's a bit of a myth that it's just going to be wealthy people that are going to be affected. I mean, they use this phrase working people to say that's the only people, you know, those people will be protected from tax rises. But actually, a lot of people, you know, might have other assets, might have other ways they're paying taxes. And also, you know, ultimately, wherever you put taxes, it's the consumer that pays for them anyway. So if you tax businesses too highly, then they pass those costs on to the consumer, or we pay for them, you know, through higher prices and things like that. So we all have to foot the bill.
It is also important to reflect as well that Rachel Reeves has decided to increase public sector pay, and that is a large chunk of that £22 million black hole. That's included, and that's about 10 billion, isn't it?
Yeah, it's roughly half of the 20 billion black hole. Now, she will say that she had no choice. I mean, to a certain extent, these pay disputes do have to be settled at some point, but she has chosen to go for, I think, the higher end, essentially. She's agreed to give junior doctors 20% pay rise over 2 years. That's raised a lot of eyebrows. She's accepted the view of the other pay bodies for other public sector workers of around 5.5%. Now, fair enough. I think those people need to have at least a pay rise in line with inflation, if not more. That's reasonable. But for her to say that is, an uncosted thing belonging to the last government, I think is slightly disingenuous. That's her own choice. It's a reasonable choice. It's a perfectly defensible choice, but it is her choice.
And even if she wasn't aware of the full picture, which is what she says, that it's way worse than any institute had predicted, this is still bad management, isn't it, of public finances?
I think so, and I think it's bad management on all sides. I think that she is right to say the fiscal inheritance was poor from the last government. There's no question about that. The general economic picture is not good. But what's worrying is that some of the things that she's planning to scrap are things like infrastructure projects.
Yeah.
And one of the big problems that we've had over the past few decades is not enough investment in infrastructure. That drives economic growth. And Labour's big message is we're going for growth. How does that square then with her scrapping lots of these road projects and rail projects?
We have a Victorian infrastructure. It's absolutely, and people think we're going to progress with this. I mean, we're talking about Railway Restoration Programme, AXT. It saves 85 million quid. I'm sure people, I don't know what people think about this. 40 new hospitals. There's going to be a big review on that one. Axing of adult social care charging reform. It saves £1 billion. Social care. We haven't got any funding in social care, and they're going to take £1 billion out of it.
Yeah, another issue that's going to be, the issue that's plagued British politics for the last 10 years is going to be shunted into the long grass again. But yeah, you're right to highlight road and rail. I mean, people know that the roads are over-congested, the trains don't arrive on time. That is all holding back growth. That's all holding back the country's potential. And if this is a government that is serious about growth, you'd think that they would be increasing the funding.
Well, about time somebody's going to have to get serious about migrants in this country. They say they will scrap. Rachel Reeves says she's scrapping the Rwanda deportation scheme and cracking down on migrant hotels. And that will save £8 billion pounds. So what do we do as a country now? Are we now sitting saying, okay, yeah, just keep getting these migrants in. Yeah, we'll pay from that somewhere. We haven't got any money set aside, but we'll find it from somewhere. 8 billion, yeah, stick you up in a hotel doing this. When is anybody going to stand up and say, anybody in authority, any top people I'm talking about, because ordinary people believe this is out of control. We can't solve the world's problems. We can't sit and say, come to us. We're seeing the reaction in Ireland there is to this at the moment. And this just is unbelievable that we are forced to spend all this money on people that shouldn't be here.
Well, it's an extraordinary amount of money, but I don't see how Labour has a plan to deal with it. It's all very well pointing the finger and saying that the Conservatives spent all this money on hotels. But if their plan is simply to process people more quickly, that implies
staying in the meantime.
Well, exactly. They have to stay somewhere in the meantime. But also, if they're accepted at the current rate, I mean, the rate of acceptance has gone up considerably in the last 10 years. About 70%. It used to be only 10 years ago, it was about 30%. So something has changed there.
Yeah, so basically, if you apply for solace in Britain or whatever it is, there's a 70% chance you'll be granted.
Yeah. Essentially. And so does that mean that people are going to be shifted from hotels to social housing? Is that actually solving the problem?
That's cost in itself.
Exactly. All of these things cost money. And we know that, the Labour Party is not serious about reforming the migration system. It's committed to our place in European Convention of Human Rights, for instance, which a lot of people think is a barrier to, deporting people who shouldn't be here, including criminals who shouldn't be here, let alone, people who just simply have failed their asylum application. It does seem that problem is set to continue, that it's not something that they're going to take seriously. They've highlighted the cost, but what is their solution to the problem? That remains to be seen.
OK, Fraser, we're taking it seriously this morning. We're going to have you back again. We'll talk about this again. We want to know what people think about this. If you have your say on the programme today, how would you save that money? We're looking at what the Chancellor is chopping, but there is a black hole in UK finances. Pensioners are being hit again. No fuel allowance now for most pensioners. If you own property, if you run a business, you're going to be hammered, right?